What's up, y'all? This is LTJ Reads. This is Throwing Light, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Before we get started, remember, y'all, it's 2026. I have now done the Throwing Light tour in Texas. It is available up on my YouTube channel. Just follow this video to my YouTube channel. Make sure you're following that. All things Throwing Light, our main interviews. Now we've got the playlist. Throwing Light is going national. We're going to be doing more of the tour. New York City is coming up this month. You also get access to all the new projects I'll be working on. We're going to be doing documentaries, music videos, all that in 2026. If you're ever interested and have any ideas or have any questions, LTJ here is on. That's the best way to follow me on Instagram. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, remember, follow me on subscribe YouTube. All right, we're going to kick it off. We have a very, very fun episode. I have a feeling coming up with Mr. Jamie Ryan here. You're Mr. Dublin Leather 2025 and you're Mr.
Leather
Leather
Europe.
Europe 2026.
That's right. We've got a collection
It's
going here.
always confusing on where the leather and the city are going to be on the it's either leathers before or leathers after. So I seem to mess up on that sometime. I'm very
That's right.
excited to have you here. Sounds like we were in the same place together and did not know each other at the
Yes.
time at Manchester
You.
Leather Weekend. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody how you got involved?
Yeah, so I'm Jamie. I've been involved in the leather fetish scene for, I guess, 12, 13 years now at this point. I think it kind of became clear fairly early on that I was going to be involved or have an interest in fetish. As soon as I had an internet connection and started realizing, I could search for things, I started searching for hairy men, and then I came across a website called Bearbound, and I realized, okay, I like people being tied up, and that led to leather. And then I eventually discovered there's more people like me out there. I'm not the only one. There's people locally, and I got involved with the Irish leather scene. And then, of course, being in Europe, I have access then to the rest of Europe. And it took a while. I think over the years, I was a little insecure and a little shy to push myself out. But in the last, I'd say, 4 years or so, especially post COVID, I've become a lot more publicly active. And so that led to the titles and just having a good old time traveling around Europe. I'll be over in the States in about, I think, 2 weeks' time is MAL.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so it's been really fun. Yeah, having the title's been great. Having the second title's been even better, and I love my little gay life.
Your little gay life. That sounds like a
Yes.
television show. Your little gay life in Dublin.
My
Um,
weird little gay life.
so we've got two tracks here. Let's start back to let's stay here in Dublin. How long how long have you been involved in this community?
Yeah, so in terms of active involvement, I mean, I started going to local nights back in the end of 2012/2013, I think. So I think that's about 12 years ago. So how I started to get involved was I did cloakroom duty for a night that was running back then, and I do door, and that was really a way for me to start to get to know people, even though I was quite shy and I was afraid to actually approach people. When you do door or cloakroom, people come to you, and you kind of have to have those conversations. And I think early on, I was kind of a bit on and off on the scene, so I'd get a little insecure or I'd get in my own head. I'd take a little break. Um, but every time when I was ready, leather was there for me again. The community still moves. You can come and go, but the things keep trudging along. I think it was really post COVID when I started to get more present in the scene and more actively involved. It was a group called Leathermen of Ireland that had just started up. It started off as a Zoom call actually during COVID. So on Sundays they'd have a little group call just to keep each other sane. And eventually, when the COVID restrictions lifted, they started a little Dublin Leather Social, and I started going to that. And then about 2020 through two, I think 22, they started a leather weekend in January, and the leather weekend is actually celebrating its fifth anniversary this month. And the leather weekend was really when I decided, okay, it's time to do this. Sadly, I didn't actually go to the first Dublin Leather weekend. If some people can't believe this now, knowing me, but back then I psyched myself out. I thought, oh, there's going to be important leather people here. There's people with followings and people who are known, and I don't think I can stack up to that. So I ended up not going to the first leather weekend, and the FOMO and disappointment was so crushing. I was so annoyed with myself that I just didn't push a little more. So the weekend after that, the second weekend they had, I decided I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to talk to everyone in the room, whether I know them or not, and make a fool of myself. And it was really one of the most life-changing things for me to finally kind of break through that barrier and get over my own inhibitions and get out of my head. And since then, yeah, I've just been doing more and more. Started going to events in Berlin. Uh, then eventually I went for the Mr. Dublin Leather contest. I lost the first time, and I kind of thought, that's that. I had a good time, all done. And then a few friends convinced me to give it one more go, and I did, and I ended up winning that title, which was amazing. And really, the since this time last year when I first won the title, I've just been having the most amazing time. I've never felt more connected to this group of people. It's being a title holder really puts you in a publicly accessible space where people have permission to come up and talk to you. I've had so many wonderful conversations with strangers on the street and with newbies in the community, and now I'm at the point where I really feel like I'm the person that I looked up to way back when I was afraid to go to events, afraid to talk to people. I'm now that person. I embody everything that I kind of hope to be, and I'm pretty proud of myself.
I That's a story I hear a lot, is growing into becoming things that you admire
Yeah.
or fantasize being and stuff. And I get a lot. I talk to a lot of people, especially Leatherman, that that resonate. Well, they go back to their childhood, and they, discuss their yearnings, to be the Tom O'Fallon type of prototype. Which for
Mm.
me now, being actually a person of color, and my aesthetic is not as leathery as a lot of people. So it's very interesting to me. What I want to go back is, okay, so life changing. You talked about your life changing. I know this community changed my life. Can you navigate or discuss some ways in which you change by obtaining the community and the title?
Yeah, I think before I had that sort of turning point or that moment where things changed, because it really was a specific period where I just my perspective shifted. Leather was something that was like a little side part of my life, sort of a pastime, a hobby, something that I can kind of play around with and then leave in the corner and then come back and play around with. And I never really fully identified as a Leatherman. In fact, when I was younger and more insecure, I was quite bitter towards people in the fetish scene and the leather scene, people who were established, because I felt they were stuck up or that they took it all too seriously. We used to kind of joke in a kind of not so nice way about S&M people, stand and model, and we kind of look at people like that and think, they think they're all that. They're completely owned by the gear they wear, and there's nothing underneath the gear. They're hollow, and they need all this stuff to make them feel good. And that's the way that was my mindset before, right? And I didn't have many friends really who were kind of scene goers or people who were regularly on the scene. I kept that aspect of my life quite separate. There was just me, the regular Jamie, and then there was this little kind of thing I did, um, and they were kind of two separate parts of me. I think when I started to really become more active, actually, I keep saying becoming more active, but actually, it's really when I started to examine my own reactions to the leather scene and the way I viewed myself and the way I viewed other people. I would view other people up here and I would view myself down here. And what I realized over time is we're really all somewhere around here, right? Like we're all on the same level to some degree. We're all a ball of insecurities. Some of us have, worked through that and progressed through that, and we cope with it on a day-to-day basis. And some of us are still on that journey, and I was a little earlier in my journey than other people. I think the more I invested in the scene, the more I really earnestly presented myself, um, interacted with people the way I would like to be interacted with, kind of face some of my own insecurities. I really started to feel the leather and feather sheen becoming something that I associated with on a deeper level. I wasn't just making play buddies now, I was making really deep friendships and deep connections, people who are they're basically my family, not even a second family. They are my family. They're people I look out for. They're people I love to bump into the same people at different events, no matter whether you go to the US, whether you go to Manchester, Berlin. These are the people you run into, and the people you check in with, and you grow with. So now, like I'm very fortunate to be in a position where there aren't two separate parts of me. I bring myself 100% to my workplace. I bring myself 100% to my family. I'm privileged to do that. Not everyone has that privilege. So knowing that I'm able to do that, I try to do it with all of my being. And I guess having a title, to me, having a title is really just being able to do that more publicly, at scale, in a more amplified manner. It's one of the ultimate goals of having being a title holder and having a title for me, and being so actively involved in the scene now is, well, one, it's an accountability partner. When you have a title, when you're out there, you have to commit, you have to show up, you have to do the thing that you said you were going to do when you were on that stage trying to impress everyone. So there's that side of it, but also you get to give back to the people that you see, and you see a younger version of yourself. You see someone who's going through that same thought process that you were at maybe 2, 5, 10 years ago, and you get to help raise the bar for everyone around you. Um, so yeah, like in a way, a world of difference between the way I thought back then and the way I think now. But really, it was just ultimately it was just about looking at myself um, as someone who belongs in that community, rather than looking at myself and the like me and the other. I think that's kind of a parallel with a lot of the ways the world looks at other groups of people, or the way we seem to clash, even in our own communities, when we don't actually have that moment where we realize, no, no, we are on the same level. We all have similar struggles, right?
So I wish that, and the thing is that if we only started at the struggles we share, and I just feel like we don't start there. Especially right now, what's going on in the United States, and things like LGBT, well, LGB without the T, and things like that. It just it's interesting to me. You brought up there are two things: taking things too seriously and insecurity. Okay, I want to talk about taking things too seriously. What is that? What does that look like to you?
I think, okay, I'll give you one example. I think sometimes in the title world. And of course, I'm speaking more from the European title world. I know the European and the US scenes have slightly different cultures, but having a title, being Mr. Leather Europe, it sounds very lofty and it sounds very important, and it is something that is important to me. It's something I worked at. It's something I wanted for a while and didn't think I would ever achieve when I talked to people who had previously had the title. But I think it's also important, as much as something can be meaningful and important to you, you also have to remember that to an extent, it is a pageant. It's a crown for a day. It's something that's nice, but it's not something that defines me so much that when I pass the title on, I lose who I am as a person. It's something that augments who I am. I think sometimes I see this a lot in social media and community groups online, and of course, everything online is a little more amplified and a little more volatile. Sometimes we get lost in the narratives of, in title holders' case, of we're not, you're not doing the work, you're not you doing your title properly. Um, you need to do this as a title holder to to give back to your community. And often the even the term doing the work is associated in a kind of a narrow band of activities that are considered work. Um, but I think sometimes we forget with I think particularly with the political landscape, we feel a lot of strong emotions around political involvement, activism, um, being being a good standing member of the community, actually doing work instead of just standing and looking pretty, because I think that seems quite a negative thing, particularly in title holder communities. But we also have to remember that, this is also supposed to be fun. Contests are supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a way to promote clubs, promote bars, give people a chance to have a moment on stage, give people a chance to have a growth moment. There are people who have entered contests, and I'm sure you know this yourself, haven't won, but that they have gotten so much value out of that. They've had so many meaningful conversations as a result of doing that. There's so much beyond just having this official title and making sure that you look perfect, making sure you raise all the money at all the and do all the community projects. It's about making other people feel good. It's about you being the best version of yourself. It's about making a space that other people look into from the outside and go, I really like that group of people. I like what they're doing. I'd love to be a part of that. I think when we go back to taking things too seriously, if we spend all of our time infighting, then other people are going to look at that community and go, "This looks hostile. This looks a little uh, difficult to navigate. I don't know if I'm afraid to be involved with that."
How
And
the
I mean,
community is portrayed, and that's a very good thing to bring up. How other people see our community. And I always try to tell people, if our, and I hate using the word enemy, but if our haters, okay, see us fighting and they're learning exactly what triggers all of us, then we have introduced them to new ways to bring us apart or break us apart. And they're like, well, oh, well, this community doesn't even like trans people either. You know what I'm saying? And so we're going to just double down on that then.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And that's
yeah,
always been a concern of mine, is I want us to not show our hand in front of people all the time. And they don't need to see all our cracks. You know what I'm saying? These are conversations that we need to be having privately, and about how we need to behave and carry ourselves as a community. I feel like if we're putting our whole community on display and showing the ups and the downs, yeah, that is what it is. But just like going back to social media, people have this new idea of what reality is. And a lot of people
mm,
look at Facebook and social media and think that what they're seeing is the reality. Oh, and we don't. There, look, I have people that come up to me continuously. Oh, you know me, we're Facebook friends. And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't know who you are, but thank you. Like, come and, or I'll be in a space with someone and they message me after the fact. I'm like, oh, you were at the Eagle. I want to say hi. So this kind of goes back to what I love, your S&M standard model. I am not a standard model. Um, if I see someone that is alone, or whatever the case, especially when I'm at the Austin Eagle, I know that I've been. I've been around a lot of stand-in model people, and I've judged for contests and things like that. And I think as leaders, um, that we shouldn't be waiting for people to come up to us. Like we should be going up to people and making them feel welcome. And I think just standing around and thinking that people just know who you are and what you represent and expect people to be able to interpret who you are, I think that's just an assumption. I get people coming to me like, oh, you're intimidating and all this whatsoever. But I have all these various aspects of my life that contradicts me being intimidating or things like that. You know what I'm saying? But people
Hmm.
want to see, this is the deal. People want to see what they want to see, and people want to believe what they want to believe. And I think that's where we lose a lot of our power in social media is the narrative. It's so important to control our own narrative. And we don't have fully control of our narrative right now. And that takes time, commitment, leadership to get people on the same page. And I don't think everybody has only look, I am blessed or whatever you want to call to have the mental fortitude and the awareness that the things that are happening around me are wrong. That people are being targeted, innocent people. As we're having this interview now, our country has gone and attack people without permission and things like that. And the response is, and which I don't know if I believe it's not, like no Americans were hurt, but so okay, great, but why are we not talking about the countries of the innocent civilians that are hurt too? And this is my biggest thing, and I try to get people to understand our sense of urgency. These people over here that are whatever they are against us, don't care if we live. They don't care if we die. They don't care if we have access to healthcare, medicine, nothing. And I think when you get to a point you're living somewhere, when you realize that people amongst your community don't really care if you're dead, you know what I'm saying? That's a new mental place to be in. And I wish that people here in my community would have that sense of urgency and understand this is the same energy that's killed millions of people that were not whites or like them. And we're letting this tradition of white supremacy um, be normalized when it is wrong. So I think that we have to do better in terms of telling people who we are. And I think that kind of fits a lot of what you've been saying here. Again, going back to controlling our narrative. Um,
It's interesting that you say that, though. I mean, when you mention controlling our narrative, I think that's challenging because to say our narrative suggests that we have a unified view. We don't have a unified view. We are too big as an umbrella group of people to have one unified view. What I would say though, it's such a fundamentally simple thing that it almost sounds it sounds passive when I say it, but just the act of being a little kinder and seeing people, really seeing people before responding. The way social media platforms in particular are engineered right now is to not allow that to happen, because if that happens, there is less engagement, there's less sparky conversations that keep these platforms running. I mean, I see this a lot on Facebook in particular, because on Facebook you can type lots of words, and when people can type lots of words, they have a lot of opinions, and that usually leads to very inflammatory discussion patterns. And I'm sure you've seen there's lots of drama in the leather community alone, let alone any other fetish community. In the leather community alone, there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of vague booking about people they don't like, and it leads to this hostile kind of atmosphere. One thing that I always encourage people in every community to do is just go to a physical space and be physically present with people. It is very different to simply talking to people online. I think there's a lot of benefit to social media in the sense that it's like a town square. It's a way for people to connect with each other on a wide scale. We probably wouldn't be talking with each other right now without social media. But aside from social media, turn up to a local event. If there isn't a local event, set up a casual meeting. When you talk to people face to face, it's very hard to maintain that kind of energy. You're forced to really hear people's perspective and see people's perspective. And I think that's always been a strategy that I've used or encouraged when it comes to people who are gender skeptical or skeptical of other identities, such as if someone is a pup, is a gimp, or any of these things that someone doesn't match someone's own worldview. When you get to sit down and have a chat with them, things you break down those barriers. It's a lesson as old as time, and we still often miss it because it's such a simple thing. But when you actually sit down with people and get to know them, and we always try to do that with our local socials. You know, we don't have a policy in who's not allowed to come. So people have been exposed to folks of color, trans folks, non-binary folks, people who have a very different perspective on life. And when we all come together and have conversations, it's very hard to have that same negative, resentful energy. It's very hard to dehumanize someone. I'm just really sad that, unfortunately, at a large scale, it's very easy on social media platforms and on online news platforms to really engineer with precision a kind of discord and negative sentiment towards groups of people with these large sweeping narratives. And the way I hear people in public talk about minority groups of all sorts, oh, it's I have to limit my exposure sometimes to that, to be honest. Sometimes I will just turn off the comments section of a page, or I will turn off social media when I'm reading too much of that stuff because it's like it is a poison. It's a type of poison, and it worries me how unaware people are when they participate that in that. And I'm not above it as well. I've gotten caught in little online debates with people over things like whether someone should be using a bathroom or not, and I had to take a moment and think this is an insane conversation to be having or even participating in. And the only solution I can think of, the only solution I can think of to all of this, the only thing I can do as an individual is just try to get people to meet face to face and have a conversation about it because you can't maintain. There's too much thinking when you're typing. There's too much preparing of statements. There's too much like personal ego of I need to get back at that person regardless of whether I agree or not with what they're saying. Um, it's a weird state the world's in right now. I don't think there's really been an era like this that's like there's a lot of things in the world that you can say, well, this was like this in a previous generation, and every generation has this. I think we're in new territory. I don't think I've ever seen this level of fear and paranoia at a global scale, not just at a nation scale. You know,
It's the people that are engaging. It's the leaders. I got a gender studies. I did a lot of gender studies in my grad school degree. And we talked just a lot about cultures and things like that and motivations. And one thing I learned, like war is one of the only transactions still that are negotiated just between men because most of our global leaders are men, they're not women. And it's weird to gender energy and things like that, but we're dealing with a very toxic. I hate people probably hate the phrase toxic masculinity, but that is what it is. It's masculinity. Um, you know, says that's the way to be. If you're not a white man, then life is more of a struggle for you or whatever. But I just wish that I was always fascinated with Queen Elizabeth the First when I was in school, just because the Elizabethan culture was Shakespeare and drag was a big thing, and all these things I felt like the culture faced in England, especially, was because they were having to negotiate gender a lot in their leadership, and they were faced with a lot of different cultural issues. And so I don't feel like the United States, we haven't had a woman president, and I don't think we've had to confront gender and leadership yet.
Mm,
And I think it's healthy. We need that. We need to have that happen here in our country so that we can negotiate power and overcome gender and power. But right now, it seems that power is something that is negotiated between majority men in the world. And that's a hard thing to overcome, right? We
mm-hmm.
have created this narrative that men are superior, men are this and that, and it's constantly disproven every day by the strength of women and our sexualities, trans people, that everybody has the ability to have power and to be leaders if they want to be. And going back to the whole energy of the world, it's just because we have some like bad people right now, you know, that are
Well,
loud.
we've always had bad people, but we've never given bad people this level of access to our everyday technology, our everyday thoughts. Well, I don't think it's a case that we've never done that. Dictators have always existed. It's just the toolkit that they have now is really a whole new world. I mean, the way people idolize some of the wealthiest in the world who are actively doing harm. Sometimes I think our community, whether we like it or not, is a mirror of the world that we live in. And I think when we see some of these disagreements in our community, or we see these struggles, they are in some respects a mirror of struggles that we have in the greater world. I'd love for our leather world to represent something that's kind of beyond that, or is a model for what could be. If anything, I think actually, if we were talking about our own communities, I think the rubber community are doing a better job than the leather community at just thinking beyond arbitrary titles, thinking beyond arbitrary fixed rules around things. The rubber titles were some of the first titles to open up or make the titles themselves self-declarative or non-gendered. Um, Rubber has always represented a kind of a more fluid, forward way of thinking. I don't hear about drama in the rubber scene like I do in the leather scene, and that makes me wonder. Is it just a case that these are just we're just kind of stuck? We're stuck in this idea of what we see in the news and what we see in social media. I don't know why that doesn't reflect as much in rubber. Then it seems to be well, more a leather thing than a rubber thing. It's curious to me actually.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that now you've got me wanting to do some research and figure out what their secrets are. All right, Jamie, we're towards the end, and I've got one last question for you. Is there any aspect of our community that you feel like, or the community in general, the world, that you feel like we're not shedding enough light on?
That's a big question. I think one thing that we need to really instill in people, both new and old in our community, is you don't need permission to start things. You don't need permission to grow things. I think a lot of people are stuck in places in the world where there isn't a local club, there isn't a venue, and they think, well, someone else will start it eventually, but I'm just going to complain now about the lack of a scene. Or maybe the scene is small, and it's like, oh, I just go to this place because my local scene sucks. Um, if there's anything you can do is ask yourself, what can I contribute to this? Where can I start? And you don't need as many resources as you think. A club can be as simple as a Zoom call. A leather meetup can be as simple as three people in a cafe, not necessarily in gear, talking about leather. Everything starts from one person having that idea. And I would encourage everyone out there who isn't actively involved, or is maybe looking at people who are actively involved as tryhards or seeking attention, get over that and go and do something. Do something small. It doesn't have to be major. It doesn't have to have lots of infrastructure involved. try to make the world a better place as an individual, because I think in the world we live in right now, we need this. We need these sparks. We need these moments of joy and optimism. Because if we don't have those, we're just going to get we're going to drown ourselves in all of this negative sentiment.
I agree. All right, Jamie, thank you so much for being on the show. Great conversation. Y'all, this has been another episode of Throwing Light. Jamie, why don't you go ahead and take us out?
If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
There we go, y'all. Another episode. Thank you so much, Jamie, for being on the show. I hope to see you again I'm going to see you again in the future. Maybe you'll be back on Throwing Light.
Yes,
We'll see.
I'll
With
see
that
you in
being
the
said,
series
y'all,
at
this
some
has been
point.
another episode of Throwing Light. I'm LTJ Reeds, and we are out.